No one prepared me for the task at hand. I accepted the challenge from my publisher, Random House, all on my own, so only I was responsible. I had to write a popular book about the emotional world of farm animals, among them cows, pigs, chickens, and turkeys. When it became clear that no one's ever attempted this before, that was all I needed to accept the challenge. But once my egotistical dust had cleared, I was left with a question that reverberated through my head like an endless echo. Where in the world would I start? It's a daunting task to write about the emotions of non-human animals. When I was writing When Elephants Weep, I was lucky enough to spend time in the field, watching the behavior of wild animals and talking with people who spend their adult lives doing the same. I can't tell you how many times I ask myself, what on earth are you doing, Mason? Just because you're a trained psychoanalyst, you think you can tell instinctual behavior from emotional behavior? These aren't humans. They don't think like we do, or do they? Well, the only way anyone can answer that question is to spend a lot of time with them, talk to those who study them for a living, and have a very open mind. And even then, you might only get a small glimpse of what they're thinking. There are billions of farm animals in the United States alone, and many times that amount around the world. Nearly all, however, are born and bred to be killed and eaten. And I can only guess the emotional impact this has on them every day of their lives. Where would I be able to find animals that are free to think and feel more naturally, where they're not completely stressed out from the factory farming ordeal? Thank goodness for the internet. I didn't realize how many sanctuaries there are around the world for farm animals. But there it was, listed in detail for anyone to find. I didn't have to scroll too far down the alphabetized list to find one right in my own backyard. Animal Place in Vacaville, California, just an hour from my Berkeley home. That's as good as any place I can think of to start.
Come on, Oliver. Come on.
Come on.
Come on, sweetie.
Kim Sturla is the co-founder of Animal Place.
Kim, this is a beautiful place.
Thank you. It is, and especially this time of year when it's so green, it's just it's gorgeous.
Wonderful. So do you mean to tell me that all the animals here have been rescued?
Each one has really come from, a different situation. Some auction yards, actually some from research laboratories. And every animal, there was nowhere else for them to go. So we're really kind of their last resort here.
So you would say that every animal here has had some history of personal abuse?
Most of the animals here, if not all, have had a real tough beginning. And it's just that much more important that once they get to Animal Place that we try to provide them with a secure, loving environment where they're going to live out the rest of their lives.
And do some of them, can you tell they've been abused in the way they react to you, or does it differ for each and every animal?
Each and every one. Venus, one of the pigs, she was terribly abused, and we got her as an adult. It has taken her years. She's in her about 13 years old now, and only the past couple of years will she actually let me pet her and be relaxed.
So it's a question of trust.
It's all about trust.
Do you think she looks at you and thinks, I don't trust this species, but this woman, Kim, she seems okay? Do you think they have thought processes like that?
My gosh, without a doubt.
Obviously, I wouldn't need to convince you that these farm animals have emotions.
There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that those animals have a wide array of emotions, very similar to dogs and cats. And then Sally, she was the dump on the road by
If I'm going to write about them, then I have to get to know them. And to get to know them, I first have to meet them.
This is a place that takes
My first farm animal experience, and what a treat.
He plays.
Two of Kim's favorites, Val and Susie.
Hello, sweetie girl. And they don't have tusks.
Oh, the males do.
The males do.
time.
Now, are the males different than the females in terms of their temperament?
No, no.
They're also sweet.
Oh, very. You can eat
Good-natured, and you can play with them.
And here's my favorite, Jeffrey. She is the sweetest pig one could possibly meet, Susie.
Susie, come here, Susie. Susie.
They had their little difficulties introducing them.
Oh, so they
There
weren't
goes.
together. Oh, Susie.
What makes this experience so special for me was learning from Kim about Val and Susie's history. If not for Animal Place, their lives would be different indeed. In fact, they wouldn't be alive at all.
Little Susie and Valerie were pigs that were born inside a research laboratory. A cage is all they knew. You have to understand that these little pigs had never been outside.
Right. Okay, who wants to be cooled down? Come on.
They had never felt the sunshine on them. They had never had the ground to root in. They'd never had grass. They had always lived their entire life inside a little cage measuring probably 4 feet square. That was their existence. So they came to Animal Place and were a bit in shock because there were all these other animal sounds and they all of a sudden had freedom. They could do whatever they wanted to do. They arrived during the summer months, and I quickly found that one of the things they love to do is to be cooled off when it gets too hot.
Get you cooled down.
Normally, Val and Susie would be cooling themselves off with mud baths, as pigs do, but they were recently spayed, and the stitches hadn't healed yet, so we wanted to keep them clean. So when it gets real hot here, I make these big, huge ice cube blocks in our freezer, and I call them over to me, and I just rub them down with ice cubes, and they thoroughly, thoroughly enjoy it. As I think almost any kid would when it's a hot day if they can't jump in a pool. And yeah, just ice them all down and we just kind of play.
Susie.
They get silly and romp around and I get silly with them, and it's just a playtime for both of us. People come here for tours and they think, gosh, what lucky animals. Well, you know, I see it the other way around. I mean, I feel so fortunate that I'm allowed to take care of them. I'm allowed to be in their company, that I can be with them every day and interact with them. Doesn't get much better than that, to know you saved their life and ensure that the remainder of their life is going to be good.
Ned Wuyukmacha, who co-founded Animal Place with Kim, is a veterinarian who teaches veterinary medicine and ethics at the University of California at Davis. Ned lives by the code that kindness and respect has to be an integral part of veterinary medicine. Joe, a steer, is but one example of Ned's philosophy.
He doesn't know if I'm friend or enemy.
If somebody who comes on the property, a total stranger, they would be more wary of that.
Is
generally.
that because cows are just flighty animals?
Well, they're prey animals. Joe's a Jersey, and they are considered to be a waste because they're not going to produce milk, and unless they're a beef of the beef breeds, then they are simply thrown away, basically. He was sent to auction as a day-old calf, and then what was going to happen to him after that, who knows? I mean, he might end up in a veal crate or whatever, but he went down.
Went down? What in the world does that mean? I asked Ned, what does he mean that Joe went down? I was totally unprepared for his answer.
Thrown away. Down animals are those animals who go down for various medical reasons and can't get up. Sometimes they have broken limbs. Sometimes they're just so metabolically sick. Typically, the stockyard wants to try to get money out of them, and if they can't get them up with various means, then the animal becomes trash, and they just push them aside to what's known as a dead pile to deal with later or let them die.
Joe is one of the lucky ones. Through the kindness of a total stranger, he was taken out of the dead pile and given a second chance at Animal Place.
Hi, Jessie. We're probably not going to be able to get too close to her because she'll run away.
Considering how their lives began, and for the fact that they were destined from birth for the slaughterhouse, the cows at Animal Place have learned from Kim and Ned that some humans can be trusted, although that trust has taken years to develop and must be reinforced practically every day.
Yeah. Hi, Jessie. Hi, sweetheart. Jessie's story is one of these that you would think is made up. She was about a month old, and she was in Colorado and was being trucked to auction to be sold for slaughter, and she jumped out of the truck when the truck was going down the freeway, and she shattered her left hind leg. You can see how badly deformed it is, and she was just lying there, badly bruised and in really bad shape. And two people who were coming to visit Animal Place, Gene and Laurie Boston, happened to be on the freeway behind this truck.
Oh my God.
You could just, unbelievable. And they see this little black form on the highway, and they stopped, and the farmer had stopped, of course, and the farmer did not want Jessie because she was no longer valuable to him because she couldn't be sold. She had a fractured leg, she was down, she couldn't stand up, and so he gave her to Gene and Laurie, who brought her to Animal Place. We took Jessie into my university hospital and radiographed her leg. It was very badly fractured, beyond surgical repair, and in fact my colleague said we should kill her, and I said no. I said we'll give her a chance. We'll see what happens. We can always kill her. So we gave her stall rest, and within 2 months, she was standing up and walking on the leg.
Wow.
And within about 4 or 5 months, she was running on the leg.
Running?
Running.
What a will to live.
Yeah. Well, cows are known for their healing abilities.
Look at that. Now, Ned, you know dogs. You love dogs. You live around dogs. Do you think that cows are every bit as emotional as dogs? Just in a different way? I mean, we read dogs very easily. They communicate with us. They look the way we want them to look. They look sad. They look disappointed. They look happy. Cows are harder to read, but from what you've been telling me, they probably have most of the same emotions that dogs do.
Well, I think they do. I knew a steer once when I was in practice. He was raised like a puppy would be raised, very close to the family and isolated from other cows, so never got to know cows very well. And he was like a puppy. He ran and played, and he came running to the people, and he'd be curious. I'd be out there taking care of a sheep or somebody, and he would run up and had to check things out. And so he was expressing emotions. In a dog, you would say he's happy. Part of the problem, again, with cows is that they are not usually in a setting where they can express those emotions or be free to express those emotions. When you go to a typical situation where cows are, they're scared, they're huddled, they're nervous about human interaction, and so you see the emotion, but it's usually fear.
An expectant mother gives birth to her offspring. A beautiful, bouncing baby boy. All 60 pounds of him, thrust from the womb in one mighty heave. The proud mom licks her newborn for hours. Her licking not only cleans the calf, it also helps develop strong familial ties that would normally last well into his first few years of life. Cows are extraordinarily curious and social animals, and the birth of this calf seems to heighten that curiosity among all of the surrounding females who move in closely for sniffs and gentle nudges, perhaps their way of welcoming him to his new world. Most calves born on dairy farms, however, are removed from their mothers and the other females within 48 hours, and they never see them again. Had this calf been born a female, she would be kept alive only to eat and produce milk. As a male, however, his fate is sealed. He will soon be sold at auction and killed for veal. This calf, like all others before him, will never know of his proud and dignified bloodlines. All of today's cows are descendants of the mighty aurochs, a gigantic creature nearly 6 feet tall, which first appeared during the Pleistocene period. Magnificent paintings adorning the walls deep in the caves of Lascaux, France, depict the aurochs and signify their significant role as a prey species for prehistoric humans. Today's cows, no matter the variety in shape, size, or color, are all descended from a single species, whose hooves once pounded the dirt by the millions, from Europe to Asia to northern Africa, and whose last member died in Poland in 1627. Meeting the animals whose stories are so compelling was exactly the inspiration I needed. It was now obvious to me that through all the places I plan on visiting, both in the U.S. and abroad, and all the people I will be talking to who have committed their lives to bettering our understanding of farm animals, there should easily be enough material for me to complete this book. So this is Freddie.
This is Freddie.
Freddie, you like that.
Freddie was found on the freeway. The California Highway Patrol officers just found this little 5-pound piglet roaming the freeway.
I didn't want to worm him. He's too fragile to give any kind of...
He was the sickest animal that we have ever taken into the sanctuary.
And what leg was it? You said it was the rear?
He had beginning stages of pneumonia. He had what's called a white muscle disease. He had a mineral deficiency. He had obvious abrasions on his back from his fall from the truck. And he had a number of other problems.
I'm sure they didn't do that.
You can probably get maybe at the youth store. Okay, Freddie. Come on, sweetie. Come on. Okay, meal time.
Freddie was fed cow's milk by the girl who rescued him. So when he arrived to Animal Place, we were very gradual in switching him over to a pig milk replacer. Well, you know, when we get in a young animal, we have to look at ways of how we can nurture them, how we can feed their stomach, and how we can feed them emotionally. And knowing what a mother sow, how she would care for her young. There would be generally a lot of siblings he would have. They would be nestled up in that big old fat sow belly, nursing on her and just getting a lot of tactile stimulation and a lot of warmth. So I immediately went out and bought a baby sling that mothers use for their newborn infants and tucked Freddie inside that sling so that he could hear my heartbeat. He could hear me breathing. He would obviously have a lot of warmth, temperature warmth from my body. And just as my motion throughout the day, whether I'm preparing his meal, one of his mini meals that he would eat throughout the day, because we fed him about every hour and a half, or I'm working on my computer, that I was with him. And he seemed to gain a lot of comfort from that.
While Freddie may live out his life in the security of Animal Place, he will never be too far removed from the ways of his wild cousins. Try as they may, those who today raise pigs in the confinement of commercial farms cannot remove through domestication the varying degrees of wildness that all pigs retain. Born in litters of 5 to 6, young piglets tend to play and sleep together, developing bonds that may last throughout their lifetime. As they grow older and move more confidently throughout the herd, they learn the ways of wild pigs by watching the adults around them, especially their mother, who is never far away. Early on, these piglets learn to root through the dirt, sniffing out tasty morsels like roots, which are part of their diverse diet, along with acorns, grasses, berries, eggs, and small invertebrates. Pigs are emotionally sensitive animals and exhibit mood swings not unlike humans. When the kids get too frisky, mother is not adverse to putting them in their place. It's only his pride that is hurt, but that's how piglets learn to make it to adulthood, for natural mortality among piglets is quite high. Learning to feed on their own takes months, and during the learning curve, mother is still the best meal in town. At 6 months of age, the piglets have grown large enough to join the ranks of the other adults in the herd, and in a short period of time, they will have integrated fully into this society. In contrast to the enviable life of wild pigs, those raised on hog farms have it quite different indeed. Breeding females, kept in a cramped crate for nearly their entire lives, exhibit behavior that, as a psychoanalyst, I consider nothing short of psychotic. Day after day, month after month, year after year, their sole purpose is to breed, litter after litter after litter, until they die. Yet in spite of our treatment of farm-bred pigs, when given the opportunity to meet humans in their natural element, wild pigs can exhibit a side of themselves few of us would ever have expected. In an extraordinary experiment back in the early 1970s, Heinz Meinhardt, a German electrician, set out on an assignment to draw wild pigs away from farm fields where they were eating everything in sight. In the process, Meinhardt got to know each of the pigs in this large community, and he began to see if a group of wild pigs could ultimately accept his presence. Meinhardt spent many months getting the pigs used to him, gaining their trust by posing no threat to their safety and security. Eventually, he was fully accepted into this community of wild pigs. What Meinhardt was able to accomplish with wild pigs is no less impressive than the extraordinary relationship Dian Fossey developed with the mountain gorillas of Rwanda. Total acceptance, total trust. First, are they pretty nice about it? It didn't take me long to recognize that just like the wild animals I've studied and written about, farm animals also possess individual personalities and all the emotions that go with it. I'm a former psychoanalyst, not a scientist. So people like me are often accused of ascribing human characteristics to animals. They even have a fancy term for it. It's called anthropomorphism. Yet, there are scientists who can expand their thoughts well beyond conventional wisdom, and in doing so, see the bigger picture that is starting to come into focus. One of these is Mark Bekoff, professor of biology at the University of Colorado, and one of the world's leading authorities on animal emotion.
In anthropomorphic, I call it one of the A words. It's kind of a dirty word. But there's no way that I could communicate what I'm learning and seeing and studying in an animal without being anthropomorphic. Anthropomorphism is attributing human characteristics to non-human beings. If I tell you that the cow in the pasture was sad, was lamenting her place, I'm not saying that she's sad in the same way I'm sad, but all I had to do was look at her posture to know she was kind of sulked down, kind of just looked lethargic. I can't think of any other way to communicate that. I could tell you about her dopamine and serotonin, and I can tell you about the muscle tone in her legs and her muscles and tendons, but that doesn't capture my telling you she was either happy or sad. So I think we need to be anthropomorphic, simply taking into account the world of the animal, but using human terms to describe their behavior.
A couple hundred miles north of Animal Place, over the rolling hills of Orland, California, lies Farm Sanctuary, which, coupled with its main facility in Watkins Glen, New York, is one of the largest farm animal sanctuaries in the world. I asked if I could come up for a visit, meet some of their animals. The response was swift. The experience unforgettable.
Would you like to have a chicken-like chirper there? Or?
Diane Miller is the West Coast manager of this 600-acre haven for once-abused farm animals, who can now look forward to a life of peace, security, and lots of tender, loving care.
Diane, I have to tell you that this is the first time I've ever felt I was becoming intimate with a chicken, that I've held one this close to my
I'm sorry you've been deprived.
chest. Well, clearly I've been deprived.
You
I didn't
have.
realize that these animals could become so interested in us, so close to us. Is that fairly common? Can you have an intimate, close relationship with a chicken or a
Certainly
turkey?
can. I have several good friends who are chickens, who listen to me much better than my people friends do sometimes.
And don't answer back, or sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do, you know, but they're very good listeners.
And clearly it's not just a one-sided relationship, right? I mean, she's deriving pleasure from this, and I'm getting pleasure from
I'd say
it.
she's enjoying that immensely. She certainly has all the same potential that a person has for intimacy and affection and caring and bonds between certain individuals.
How unusual when you think about it. After all, we don't have a history of having behaved very kindly toward these animals,
That's
do we?
absolutely right.
This beautiful, beautiful turkey here looks like a rainbow of colors. I've never touched this before. It feels so wonderful. I never knew that their emotions are actually reflected on, what do you call this part of their face?
The long dangly here
Yeah.
is called their snood.
Apparently it registers all his emotions.
Right. The head skin and neck and the snood on a tom turkey is really a barometer of their emotions. It's how they communicate with one another. And what happens is when a tom is feeling really good and he's strutting and he's happy and life is good, he's feeling good, he'll be deep red colored. And they have the capacity to change the color, their whole skin tone, all of their head and their neck and their snood, from totally white or light blue like you see around his eyes. So they can go from light blue or white to all the way deep red. And when they're happy and they're strutting and life is good, they're deep magenta red. So that's how they communicate with one another.
And then they can do that immediately?
Right.
Like in
Within a few seconds.
Within a few seconds.
Turkeys are the only farm animals bred from North American wildlife. Benjamin Franklin considered the turkey a noble bird, worthy to be considered our national emblem. Had his efforts been successful, I wonder if that honor might have changed the way we treat them today.
And
wow,
we started Farm Sanctuary in '86.
Wow.
We've always, oh, there's Valentina. There's
Hello.
again.
Hello, Valentino. You're a beautiful guy.
Lori Bouston is the co-founder of Farm Sanctuary. She wanted to make sure on my trip here that I had a chance to get to know some of her special friends, all of whom came here as rescues from the dairy industry or meat processors.
Well, this is Loverboy Valentino, as you can see. He has a well-earned name. He's just, I mean,
because he's
basically,
so kind.
Yeah. He's cuddly, he's kind, he's lovable. He's one of the animals that consistently is one of our best ambassadors because he's constantly coming up to visitors, giving them smoothies. Yeah, this is Eugene.
Good name.
He's named after my husband.
Eugene.
Yeah, little namesake.
Also a sweetheart.
Yeah, I mean, see, people, when they come and they see, like, Valentino, this is what a cat or a dog will do.
That's right.
They lean against you,
That's
they
right.
want to cuddle, they want to snuggle.
Now, what
So
is he
gentle.
getting from you now? He's pushing
Lovin's.
up against you?
Lovin's.
He likes the
Lovin's,
affection.
yeah, of course.
So cows are affectionate.
Yeah, cows
They
are
need
really
affection.
They need affection, they love affection. I mean, he will, if he was laying down right now, he'd wrap himself around you, just like a dog, you know, just like if you're leaning against a dog.
So
and
it's just not
cuddles.
true that there's nothing going on inside that
And you know, a lot of,
huge head.
oh no, all kinds
A
of
lot
stuff.
going on.
Mainly I think give me kisses. Yeah.
God.
They're
so-
really sociable animals and they need a lot of attention. They need a lot of love.
And who do they think you are?
Well, I think I'm Auntie Lori most of the time now since
Auntie Lori.
since they have their mom Diane as our California manager here. But you know, that's another thing too. I'm all over the place working on cruelty cases and another shelter, and you know, Valentino right off the bat, he's like, oh yeah. But I don't think it's so much. He remembers me, but he's also likes and craves human attention. He'll do this to anybody who's walking in. I think he's particularly fond of girls, which is. But if I stood back, I think he'd give you. But he is a boy.
Lori, can you tell me about one of the most emotional moments you've ever had with an animal?
Probably most recently Queenie, who was a cow who took matters into her own hoofs, and she escaped from a New York City slaughterhouse. The slaughterhouse is in a really busy area of Queens, and she was running through the street, dodging cars while they were chasing her. She was dodging bikes, pedestrians. Obviously, she was terrified and frightened and running. And by this time, a whole force of NYPD cars had joined in the chase, trying to capture her before she hurt herself or hurt another person. And it was an incredible scene of this animal just running for her life through the streets of New York City. Fortunately, she ran into a park, and from there they closed the gates to the park, and they were able to, you know, kind of corral her and then wrestle her to the ground, and all the NYPD, you know, officials at that point became cowboys. This animal who was saved from a slaughter, who saved herself from slaughter, touched millions of people because it was really people who called into animal control saying, hey, this cow deserves her freedom because they saw it in the news, you know, so she moved millions of New Yorkers. It was sad, of course, because they did have to, you know, chase her down to the ground and you know, tie her up so she wouldn't injure herself. But of course, it was instrumental in getting this cow to the safety of Farm Sanctuary. I'll never forget because there was a cop there who, once she was on the ground, and of course she was terrified, frightened. She clearly knew what was in store for her at the slaughterhouse when she ran, and and the poor thing was chased, and he held her. You know, he put her head in his lap, and he just held her and comforted her and stroked her. And that's just the kind of magical moment that we see all the time at Farm Sanctuary, where a person does finally bond with a farm animal and realize that these farm animals feel and have feelings too. And she was shaking and fearful, and we load her up into the truck, and we're trying to comfort her and tell her she's going to a wonderful place. We got to the sanctuary. I'll never forget this. She stepped off the trailer and let out a big moo. And see, when the animals first come in, they have to be in a separate area, make sure they're pest-free and all that kind of stuff, and make sure they're healthy enough before they can be with the other cattle. So she had to be in a separate area. But when she let out that moo, all of the other sanctuary cows, there were about 60 of them, gathered round to the closest fence and started mooing back. And then she started mooing, and then they started mooing, and there was this whole incredible loving exchange. So the cows are mooing and we're crying, and it was just such an incredible, wonderful feeling. She really felt at home, and the other cattle really made her feel at home. And I just again saw, you know, they're no different than us.
Queenie will spend the rest of her life at Farm Sanctuary and never feel another moment of fear. But how can we be so sure about how she feels? Mark Bekoff.
Oftentimes a lucky animal escapes from or is released from a slaughterhouse condition and winds up on a sanctuary. And when you study these animals, you see very clearly how emotional they are. They go through this period of maybe lack of trust, they're not sure, to a very slow bonding. And you see their demeanor change, their posture, their stance, their gait, if they vocalize, if they have expressive faces. And you see that over time, they let their guard down. And the reason that they're doing that is they're not sure. And when you start making claims about whether an animal is sure about something, then you're saying that that animal is experiencing feelings. And you need to make this very slow transition from feeling of mistrust to a feeling of trust.
Once I got to meet these farm animals, the cows, pigs, chickens, and turkeys, spend time with them, observe their interactions with others of their kind, and watch their personalities unfold before my eyes, it made me wonder if we can ever truly associate these sentient animals with the meat on our dinner plates. Queenie is a dramatic example of what I'm talking about. In reality, she's no different from the billions of farm animals raised every year for slaughter. The hundreds of phone calls to animal control pleading to save Queenie's life did just that. As a psychoanalyst, I wondered, in the minds of all the caring people who made those calls, what qualities did Queenie possess that the millions of cows, pigs, chickens, or turkeys waiting in line to be killed did not? The answer seemed obvious. None. One element of researching this book has remained unresolved in my mind: the organized programs that allow school children to spend months raising farm animals, naming them like a companion animal, caring for them every day, exhibiting them with all due pride, then, just like that, giving them up for slaughter. I asked Jim Mason, a farm boy turned lawyer and animal activist, and co-author of the groundbreaking book Animal Factories, published back in 1990. Jim's history with this goes back to his early teens.
I was deemed to be big enough then to help with the what we called working the calves, which means castrating them, dehorning them, and clipping their ears and doing all these painful things. And as a young child, they'd let me watch all this, so I knew it was terrible. I saw the terror in the animals, I saw the violence of them, struggling with them and everything. And yet it was that day, it was my time to go out and help with all this. And I remember as we were going over the fence, I started crying because I knew what I was going to have to do. And my uncle said, in his exact words, they ring in my ears, he said, "If you don't straighten up and act like a man, we'll send you back to the house with the girls.
Wow, there it is.
You're a sissy if you don't go with us."
Right.
When I was on the farm, at that age, I actually didn't belong to farm kid groups, but my brother did. And there were a lot of other kinds of groups like that that prepared you to be a farmer. One of the most common projects is raising like a heifer or a pig or a steer or something for a show, and then they go to the state fair and they show these animals and they win ribbons. You see these kids spend so much time with these animals and really get attached to them almost like pets. And then comes the time when they have to part ways with that animal. They have to go to slaughter, they have to go to auction. And often it's very traumatic for these kids. Even though you've been close to this animal, you've groomed it and maybe slept with it for weeks, it has to go to market.
This is how they say it. When you get your first animal, they tell you, you always cry on your first animal, but you get used to it. You get used to it. I'm like, what do you mean by that? You know, I mean, yeah, you get used to it, okay. You get used to the fact that something that you get attached to for months is taken from you and killed. I mean, how are you supposed to get used to that? And I couldn't get used to it.
Misty Vigna is a high school student from San Jose, California, who went through this program only once with a steer she named Ferdinand.
Steer, I had him for 10 months, and it was every day I was out there. It would have been easier if we'd had a plan for him to be slaughtered from the start, but he wasn't supposed to be, so it came like out of nowhere on me. I was out there, I'd get up at 5 o'clock or 5:30 every morning, be out at school 2 hours before it started, and I'd go out there, I'd stay out there for a while in the morning, feed him and everything, and then I would be out there at lunch most of the time, and then I had 2 periods of agriculture where I was usually out there before then anyways, and I'd stay after school until 4:30 every day after school with him. So at first I thought, what am I doing with a cow? This is so stupid, right? It was a steer, and it's like, I thought, you know, it was going to be easy, and he turned into, like, he seriously, like I always told everybody, he's like a big puppy. I would call him, and he would come over to me, and he'd put his nose in his halter for me, and it's like when I went to visit him while they had him at the fair, and I went over there, and I called his name, and his little ear turned up, and he turned around to me and started mooing, and I started crying, and everyone was like, oh, there she goes again, and I'm like, so it's like for people to say that they don't have emotion, they don't know that you're there, it's not true.
On a small farm in Machipango, Virginia, Karen Davis operates United Poultry Concerns, a nonprofit organization dedicated to public education on the humane treatment and unique qualities of birds raised for food production. Have you come to see them as creatures with a healthy inner life, with a zest for life? Is this a fantasy that I have?
Jeffrey, it is not a fantasy.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Chickens are very lively birds. They come from the jungles of Southeast Asia. They live in extended family flocks that break up into small groups throughout the day. They like to dust bathe in the early to mid-afternoon, and also they take sun baths, which are also vital to their health and well-being, hygiene and proper nutritional health.
They're making sounds.
Yes.
Now, I firmly believe that we have yet to crack the code of most animal communication. What we hear is just ordinary sounds, are probably very specific things. Do you have any idea what they're saying?
Chickens are very vocal birds, and they would be calling to each other over large areas of space in the tropical forests where they come from. Roosters, for example, make what they call locator calls, where they will let other roosters with their hens know where they are. They keep tabs on each other. They will notify one another about overhead predators, like a hawk, and they certainly notify each other about food sources, and probably many things in the environment that may elude us, but they are not just making noises.
Wild chickens, Karen tells me, roam freely over vast stretches of jungle. Farm-bred chickens, on the other hand, spend their entire lives crammed into small battery cages to maximize egg production. How many birds normally are in a battery hen cage?
In a battery hen cage, normally there are 8 hens confined to a cage, each hen having maybe 48 to a maximum of, let's say, 60 square inches of living space per hen. With each hen having not enough to spread her wings, not enough to assume a normal body posture, and crawling under each other desperately in order to try to find what they need as a sheltered place to lay their eggs. And they're all being driven crazy under these circumstances because, again, everything that they need to do is frustrated by the conditions in which they're being kept.
The further into my writing I get, the more I realize that when referring to the emotions of farm animals, I have to take into account the effect their emotions have on our emotions. Every place I have been to, everyone I have talked with, they all have stories of deep-felt personal experiences where the emotions of the animals they have gotten to know have, in kind, affected emotions of their own. No one who has spent considerable intimate time with these animals comes away, it seems, without having experienced some sense of wonderment at the existence of thoughts and feelings they never for a moment felt could be attributed to pigs, cows, chickens, or turkeys. And when those who have lived the experience see it happening to others around them, it often becomes a magical moment. Jan Hamilton is the founder of Wilderness Ranch in Loveland, Colorado.
We rescued turkeys off of a dead pile. There are literally 400 or so turkeys piled up on this dead pile, and so they were in every stage of decay and dying, and some of them alive. We brought 14 turkeys home. We had a group of community service kids working out here, and one of the kids that was there was the toughest kid I've ever seen out here. I thought it was almost hopeless to have her out here. And she observed the turkeys coming in and saw that we were picking maggots off of them and trying to keep them alive, syringe feeding them, and in what bad shape they were in. And the next week, she was much more civil. And the following week, she actually was helping and asking questions and being really involved in what we were doing. And at the end of the time that she was here, I asked her what made the difference. You know, what happened? What happened with you? And she said the turkeys really got to her, and that they were abused as she had been, and she could see the connection. And as she left, she said, "What you do here is really awesome." The reason that I do this is because I know that animals have feelings. I know that they have relationships, and that they deserve, like every other being, to have the full expression of their essence, whatever that is. And that's what we want to teach here. That's what this is all about for me. It's not that I think farm animals are more important or more interesting than any other creature on the earth. We all deserve to live in harmony and abundance. And the way that we'll get there is by respecting each other. And that's what Wilderness Ranch is all about.
The day I started writing this book, I was sure I'd learned just enough about farm animals over my lifetime to know where my research would lead me. Few times in my life have I been so wrong. If I'm guilty of underestimating the ability these animals have to relate to us on such a profound emotional level, believe me, I am but one among millions. We accept dogs and cats into our lives so freely, so readily, so lovingly. Yet, after an entire year of traveling throughout the world, visiting farm animal sanctuaries, where for the most part these animals can just be themselves, I'm beginning to wonder how we came to discriminate between a pig and a dog, or a chicken and a cat. Where did it start, and why? There are no simple answers, no profound words of wisdom to impart here. All I can do as a writer is tell you, in as honest a manner as possible, my experiences and the stories of those who have dedicated their lives to bettering our understanding of these magnificent animals. The experiences I have had with farm animals are some I will never forget. Yet, these are my experiences. And just like me, on the day I began to research this book, experiences of your own are just a mouse click away. See for yourself. Somewhere near you is a place where you can go and meet a pig, a cow, a chicken, or a turkey. With your sense of curiosity fully in play, I think you'll be surprised at what you'll find. Their emotions may impact your emotions forever.